job first. Good job first. Good job first.
Good morning. It is 5:30. I am here setting up for my case. So this is the gas machine. Essentially what you do first is you go over to the back, open your O2 tank. This number right here tells you how much oxygen is in your O2 tank. Check it, close it to make sure that you're not using it throughout the cases. Check your machine. Nice thing about these machines is that they're all pretty much automatic, so then you just follow the directions. You kind of get, after that, you set up for your case. You always set up for a general case. So I have like my biz monitor, pulse ox, temp probe, my tapes. This is what's my intubation. So my tube, you always check the balloon, which is down here. Blade, always check your blade. This is a Mac 3. Always have an oral airway, tongue depressor to help you insert it. Always have gauze just in case. So this is just like a quick version of telling you pretty much how I set up my case. Depending on what's going on, you might see more or less, but it's just a general setup. You always need to make sure you have a pulse ox, EKG, and blood pressure are the standards for when you're doing anesthesia. Other things you might see too is like trainer 4, which checks your twitches. This right here is SIBO that I gotta fill up for gas. That's your anesthetic. And make sure you check your suction. Make sure you have your emergency things. I usually remember at ABCs. So instead of airway and boo bag, bougie, which helps you insert the tube if you have any issues, and suction, I put a C for S. Alrighty, so I'll get back to you. To say, always have your emergency drugs within reach. So these are pretty much vasoactives if a patient has low blood pressure, which they tend to get from anesthetics. They tend to vasodilate them, bottom them out. So you have phenylephrine, which is an alpha-1 agonist. When you give it, it tends to make them a little bradycardic, even though it increases their blood pressure. So make sure you check the patient's heart rate before you give that. Then you have ephedrine, which works directly and indirectly, more so indirectly, like 70-30. But it pretty much encourages, what it pretty much does is uses the patient's catecholamines that are already in there. So if they're depleted, if they say for an ICU patient who doesn't have any more catecholamines like norepi and stuff, they've been really sick, then you probably don't want to give them this. But when you give patients this, it increases their heart rate and their blood pressure. And then some nitro just in case. I usually don't even use this. This is like patients are having like super high blood pressures. I've only used this probably once so far, but you know, I haven't been doing it that long. But you always make sure that you have your emergency drugs that you need, like for throughout the case. Of course, you have your other emergency drugs like your epi and stuff right next to your other drugs, ready to go when you need it. Alrighty, so as far as my meds here, I'm going to turn it like this so that you can see. So I draw up my meds. You always draw up meds for a general case, even if you're just going to do a MAC case. So a MAC case is pretty much like a sedation case. Patient will still be breathing on their own. You tend to give stuff like propofol, maybe some narcotics or something like that, but no paralytics, absolutely not. But you always prepare for a general case, because a MAC case can always convert to a general case. You just want to make sure you're ready in case of an emergency. So when I draw up my drugs, I usually put them in a drawer in the order that I usually tend to give them. So I usually do lidocaine, propofol, rocuronium, and Sux. These are 2 paralytics. And then my narcotics are kind of in the middle to separate these other drugs that you tend to give throughout the case. So if you gave a paralytic, more than likely you're going to give neostigmine and glycopyrrolate. So I always have that drawn up. And then these are my antiemetics, Decadron and Zofran. And I need to take these bubbles out. Always make sure I have an IV kit ready to go, just in case. You never know. And then I always make sure that I have my arm boards on, my machine is working like what I said. Suction and boo bag. Bougie. This is a bougie. This is a bougie. Bougies, you pretty much, if you can't see the patient's cords, or if you see maybe the bottom of it, you put it in and you put the ET tube over, hoping that you get into the trachea. it's pretty much a guidance. It can kind of feel the trachea rings when you're down there. If you feel kind of like railroad tracks, like a little bit of bumpiness, then more than likely you're in the trachea instead of the esophagus. But anywho's, and then I make sure I have something like my bear hugger. Everyone knows what bear huggers are. Bear huggers. I make sure I have my arm boards on. My tape is ready to go. I always make sure I have like as much things done as possible, because I've been burned where like other people have said, oh, I'll do it for you, and then it's not done, or like you think that you like their order but not. Like you'll kind of get a little sense of like ADD, I guess. But yep, that's pretty much it. Alrighty, so when I'm done setting up my room and everything, you go to find your patient, interview them. I always have meds in my pocket, usually Versed, sometimes some emergency drugs like ephedrine or phenylephrine, like what I told you. It just depends, but always Versed, maybe even fentanyl, so that you have your meds ready when you're taking your patient back. So, queuing out.
I had to recognize it. They see me winning and know they don't like it. Act like they love me but hate me in private. I had to recognize it.